America's conservation ag movement is brought to you by these great foundational partners, empowering resilient and sustainable agriculture.
To till or not to till, the debate can open a whole can of worms in farm country. But one farmer says the proof of what he's doing is in his soil. Ag Day's Clinton Griffiths has more in this week's America's Conservation Ag Movement.
This ground is hard. You can tell it hasn't rained in a while.
With shovel in hand,
it just is an excellent profile.
Sulphur Springs, Ohio farmer Nathan Brause is taking stock of his soil.
And then the earthworms, I did see one there, but the ground is pretty dry. I think they've kind of gone down a little bit.
Creating the perfect profile.
Look at that. It just falls apart. We haven't had any rain here.
Has become a passion for this row crop farmer.
I'm 47 right now, and this is my 31st season of farming on my own.
He's carried on the conservation tradition from his grandfather and father, both of whom began no-till or ridge-till work before it was popular.
I kind of thought they were kind of crazy, and the more I did this, the farther I go down this path, the more I realized that what they were trying to do was conserve soil.
Today, he's holding on to that legacy, implementing a multitude of modern conservation methods.
This mix that we planted, this is part of that 17-way blend, so there's actually 17 different kinds of covers in this. I feel that the diversification of the cover crop is key because every one of those has an attribute that comes with it that will help your soil.
But that doesn't happen without a plan. To accomplish his goals, Brause has gone back to a 3-crop rotation: corn, soybeans, and wheat, where corn is followed by rye or barley, soybeans are no-tilled in the next spring, and that is followed by wheat. Wheat is then covered in a diversified mix of cover crops ahead of corn.
So your ground is covered all the time, and at the same time we're only putting 2/3 the farm to a cover crop instead of planting 100% of it to a cover crop just to grow a corn-soybean rotation and still not have 100% success.
Planting corn into a green cover crop, Brause will tell you, is a challenge, but it's worth it.
The corn, it gets planted into a big cover crop in the spring that big enough that you'd have to roll it or do something to get it down so you could plant it. I can just about write you a check and say, here, go cash this in November because that's going to be the best yielding corn I got.
That's not the only conservation measure on the Brause farm. They've installed grass buffers as quail habitat.
You're never going to produce a high yielding crop in those areas anyway, so you're benefiting from that still more than you would just grain farming it.
Other low-yielding fields have also been planted to hardwood trees.
Because that was some ground that would get flooded out, and it, I don't know, two out of 10 years we would lose a crop in there, So what's the point of trying to farm soil that's not going to be producing anything when it could be producing something else a long time?
And they've pulled acres out of production to make room for infield waterways. Proof he can see in the runoff after big rain events. His water is clear, less than a mile away.
It's always brown. When I sit here in the middle of these two waterways and I can see the difference, I know what's getting put into Lake Erie, and I can say, hey, we are not contributing to this, and that stuff is staying on our farm, and that's where it needs to stay.
And that's what he's hoping to do, to see he and his family stay on this farm, not just for another season, but for generations into the future.
I've always thought long term if I could. It's really hard to do that because you still got to pay today's bill.
A bill he's certain to afford thanks to years of banking on his soil.